Hi, this is Susan Olson from the Brady Bunch, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Tony Figueroa is back with us as we continue our look at the 50th anniversary of the Brady Bunch, and particularly the latest reincarnation of the Brady Bunch, that being HGTV's A Very Brady Renovation. Earlier in the program, Tony talked about the renovation of the den area of the Brady Bunch house and Studio City and the roles the various Brady Bunch cast members play on the HGTV series. As we pick up the conversation, are they going to do bunk beds?
They had to rebuild the bunk beds. They found the same headboard and footboard for the girls' room. They found it in a furniture supply house, but it didn't have the railings to connect. So they had to build the railings from scratch. They could not find the bunk beds, so the bunk beds had to be built from scratch. Paramount had a similar headboard in a warehouse for Greg's bed. It wasn't exact, but they were able to match that. Some of the furnishing, it's the same shape and size, but there might be a certain beveling detail to it that didn't exist. So they would have to shave that off and find the right fixtures. So you can find the right shape and size of a furnishing, but there was still some sanding or some, I can't remember what the tool, when you're taking like the bandsaw and you're just shaving off some of the detail that was more pronounced and simplifying the look, and then sanding that down. They found an identical type of drafting table for the den.
Cool.
Not the same drafting table, but the same type, which needed to be sanded down and refinished. And then there's a green vinyl cover that you would have on that. So they were able to match it, the lamp, and there are 2 leather chairs behind there. They found the chairs, but they weren't leather, so they had to be reupholstered. They found the exact same carpeting in a warehouse somewhere.
That's cool.
50-plus-year-old carpeting. They found that. You also mentioned early on the windows and things like that have to be compliant with modern standards, heating, cooling, energy saving, things like that. So you have to find those elements and try to match them up. So things are not going to be perfect. They're not going to be, let's say, 100% perfect. But right now we're in it's like 97% perfect. In some cases even, I mean, what they were able to do is amazing. And you could see it when they walk in and just feel, where they kept saying, I feel their presence here when they're talking about the other 3. You know, like the den. It's like, this is where all the life lessons were given to, especially Greg was in this. And he said, you could just feel it. Maureen McCormick used to like to hang out in the girl's bedroom when she wasn't in a scene. That's where she would always hang out and read. So she felt, and they're not in the same geographical location, but they recreated that space.
That's cool.
So it is rather cool to see that part of it. I'm going to mess it up, but Christopher Knight, when they were asked, it was on Stephen Colbert when they were being interviewed, is that, do you feel like that you're associated with that? And it's like, but the characters were also part of us. You know, we weren't just playing the characters. The writers and the creators took elements of us and made them to the characters. So Peter Brady is in the room already when I'm entering, and he's there when I leave. So there are elements of Christopher in Peter from studying Christopher that go into Peter. So it's not the same as saying, that's not me. There were elements for all the kids that were inspired by
who they are as people.
Yeah. I think it's a little different than Bob Denver and Gilligan.
Right.
The actors being kids were contributing by them being themselves.
And Schwartz and the writers would incorporate, being smart people, they observed that and they would incorporate that one way or another.
And they were cast because of their resemblance to their parents.
Yeah.
In the case of the girls, Eve Plum was not cast to resemble Florence Henderson because it was...
Joyce Bulifant.
Yeah, so she was cast because of a resemblance to Joyce Bulifant. So they had to look like they were related. I mean, that was a key element, but then who these kids were as kids fed into who the characters are. So I think he said it much more eloquently, but he's had time to prepare.
Yes.
So it was a wonderful way to address that type of question. Aren't you tired of this? And obviously not.
No.
They need a break from it.
Absolutely.
And they've all had opportunities to have that.
Yeah. We had a chance to talk to Susan Olson a few weeks back at one of the Hollywood Museum events. And we said it's one chapter of her life. It's one chapter of all of their lives. Now, it's a chapter that's lasted 50 years, but it's apparent just in listening to you talk about the very Brady renovation, it's a chapter that they don't shy away from because they're able to walk away from it and do other things and then come back to it.
And I would also say that it is an early chapter.
Yes.
And especially for the younger ones, it's part of not chapter 1, but maybe chapter 2.
Yeah.
They don't recall chapter 1 because they were in diapers and in a crib.
Yes.
So it was a very early, and it was at a time where things are happening in your life that are going to stay with you for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. It is not like the chapter when you joined the Army.
Right.
There was already 18 years of you before you became private, whoever.
Yeah.
Or the college years. You refer to it as the college years. You don't say the childhood years. You might break it down by grade or something. But this was the early part of their life. They all had acting jobs prior to the Brady Bunch. But it was still such an early part of their life. So there have been 50 years of them being Greg, Marcia, Jan, Peter, Bobby, Cindy, and I would get that the youngest would be pushing 60 now. So 50 of 60 plus years of life, they've been a Brady, and it's carried with them. Unlike we were able to talk to Alan Melvin, who is Sam the Butcher. Mm-hmm. That was a small piece of his life. He's remembered as Sam. He's also remembered as Barney. He's remembered as the voice of McGillic Gorilla. And
Hacker.
Yeah, Hacker
on Gomer Pyle.
On Gomer Pyle and several characters on the Andy Griffith Show. Usually
and the voice
guys.
of H.R. Pufnstuf in the movie.
That's correct. And Ann B. Davis it was not the first time that she's played Schultze, and it was a section of but for I think the younger, it was at a very defining point in life and a very impressionable point in life, and has stayed with them. And even though some of them have not always been on board with every Brady project,
one way or another, they come back to it.
It
pulls them back in.
But they don't trash it.
No, they don't.
And we have seen people, it's like, oh, that ruined my career. It was like, wait a second, that paid for your house.
Even the Brady Bunch variety show, Susan co-authored, she collaborated with Ted Nicholson and one other writer on that book. Okay, it's not high art, but the memories that she was able to pull from herself and the other cast members. I mean, look, it's not the best variety show in the world, but it's interesting, and it gives a different element to, say, Robert Reed, because he had no problem doing that show because he always
wanted to do something like that.
He wanted to do something like that, even though it was
was not his wheelhouse.
It was not his wheelhouse, but he had fun doing it. And the fact that, yes, Barry Williams aside had musical chops. Jerry, the second Jan.
Yeah, the ringer, yeah.
She had musical chops. Even Maureen McCormick could carry a tune. And, of course, Florence was in her element. The other 5, okay, maybe they're not musical performers, but they're game enough and they worked hard. Yeah. Especially singing and dancing. So you give them props for all that.
Christopher Light, makes fun of the fact that he really had no business. But he did it.
He did it.
He did not phone it in. He brought his A game. And the thing about Robert Reed, that was incorporated into the plot that Dad can't sing, Dad can't, it's like, it was incorporated there. And it was not the best, but it was not Pink Lady and Jeff.
It was not Pink Lady and Jeff.
And you're talking about.
It did not kill the concept.
Was that the one that really killed the
I think Pink Lady and Jeff pretty much killed the variety show.
And I know I talked about this before, but
pretty darn close. Tony and I actually did a segment on Pink Lady, the 40th anniversary of which is coming up in early 2020. We will play that segment in a few weeks on TV Confidential. In the meantime, a very Brady renovation airs on HGTV, while The Righteous Gemstones airs on Sunday nights on HBO, and Blue Bloods airs Friday nights on CBS. For more information on the National Comedy Center, go to nationalcomedycenter.org. That'll do it for our program this week, folks. Ed Robertson, for Tony Figueroa, Donna Allen, Phil Grace, Greg Ehrbar, our producer, Chris Corman. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time on TV Confidential.